act of storytelling that's important. It's the act of connection that's important. And you can't connect if you don't hear. And I like the way that you said, listen with the intent of hearing. So we can all do the action of listening, but really not hear a dang thing.
Right.
um, so if you're telling your stories, if you're having conversation, not to bolster yourself, not to give a formula for people to follow your proven formula, but really to connect with where they are and be the bridge to help get others to where they want to be, whether it's through your art retreats or whether it's through the art you create or the talk you create or just the conversation you have. That shows a genuinely authentic human being who cares about you. And when somebody cares about you, are you going to lean in? Or are you going to pull back?
Welcome to the Spiritual Artist Podcast. This is Chris Miller. I invite you to join me as I interview artists from a variety of disciplines. We'll share powerful stories and lessons learned while making their art. Good day, listeners. This is CJMiller, the host of the Spiritual Artist Podcast. It is a chilly morning here in Dallas, and it's a little earlier than I usually do a podcast interview. So I've had my coffee. I think I'm ready to go. I have an exciting guest today. So let's jump in and learn about the speaker business, but also the spirituality behind it, what it means to be a strong and impactful speaker. So Antoinette Roze is the CEO of WPC Speakers Global Agency and host of the SpeakerPact Podcast. Yes, listeners, she has her own podcast. It transforms experts into sought-after speakers with her proven system for securing consistent, high-value engagements. With 30 plus years of industry experience, Antoniette and her agency ensure that her speakers exponentially increase their impact, income, and influence. Good morning, Antoniette. How are you?
Good morning, CJ. Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited. It's interesting how we have so many commonalities. And listeners, I don't know if you know this, before I started doing this podcast, I produced my own art show. I did a multidisciplined art festival in Dallas for 3 years, and COVID was really rough. Let's just leave it at that. COVID was really rough, and it shut me down for a while. And in that interim is when I discovered and wrote my book. But the funny thing was, I trained, and my mentor worked for a wellness expo here in Dallas. And it turns out that Antoniette, right? You have similar connections.
Do. I think you're talking about Tony. I'm
Uh-huh.
Antoinette.
Uh-huh.
And I actually started one a little bit further east, a little bit different style, became very huge. I loved it. But that does come, the whole reason why I started the expo comes from a story that begins with voice, which I'll share as you
Oh, yeah,
want
I
me
love
to.
it. Yes. Go ahead. Share it.
So at a very young age, preteen to newly teen, I was diagnosed with late stage cancer, and there was
Oh,
nothing they could do. Was caught too late, and it was on the heels of having had been in and out of foster homes after my father had died. My mom needed some time to adjust, and there was five of us kids, four she was raising on her own, and she was young, 28. Anyhow, we proceeded to be in and out of foster homes. Of course, all I wanted was to just be back home. And so I was in pain for a long time. I just didn't want to rock the boat. I didn't want anything to keep me from getting back to my family. So when I finally did, I still kept the pain quiet because I didn't want to add undue stress on my mom. But it came to a point where we would school shop at thrift shops for our school clothes,
mhm.
and then the routine was then we would go to a laundromat, we would wash the clothes, and then we would get to try them on. So of course I was really excited about trying these quote unquote new clothes on, and I was tiny. Um, and there was this bathroom in the laundromat, and so I had grabbed up some of the favorites, and I wanted to try them on and see them on me, but all they had was this little pedestal. They had a pedestal sink and a little mirror, at the top, and I could barely see my head, much less my whole body. So I pulled over a trash can that was such that I could step on it, kind of straddle both sides and sort of see myself. Well, at one point I had stepped down off of it and something snapped and it was I couldn't hide it any longer. And my mom just saw it on my face. She gathered up all of us kids and items and took me to the hospital, and that really started a multi-year journey. Um, at first, they basically said that take me home, make me comfortable, say goodbyes, take me to Disneyland, whatever. Um, but luckily, there was a team of university doctors that heard about this young girl being sent home to say her goodbyes, and they petitioned for me, and I wound up being shipped hundreds of miles away from home again to a university hospital that proceeded to basically experiment on me. That was my only hope. The traditional methods, I was too far beyond that. Very long story short, there was a lot more that went into that. But I was in this children's ward with a bunch of other children, the lucky children whose cancers and leukemia and conditions were caught in time for more of the mainstream methods. But for me, what they were doing for me was hadn't been done outside of a laboratory. I didn't feel like the unlucky one though, because I still looked like a kid. I wasn't walking. I was in a wheelchair for really close to 2 years. Um, but they would come in looking like a normal kid, and pretty soon after their treatments began, I just saw horrors that no kid should have to witness and no child should have to go through. It was just the doctor's attempts to save their lives. Many of them didn't make it, and me, the unlucky one, quote unquote, made it, and I didn't have to go through a lot of what they went through. So as I finally did get to leave that hospital, there was just something in me, in my young little spirit, that said, I I wanna be their voices and their faces. Why didn't their parents know that maybe there were some other things they could try first? Why didn't they know that? And so I knew at a very young age, whether it's health and well-being or happiness or professional success, whatever it is, that everybody has access to information. We have the internet now, we didn't then. But even then, it's still you have to dig through to really find those golden nuggets, and I wanted to make it easier for people to be able to lay all of their options out on the table, decide what's best for them, and do what's best for them. And so that began the Texas Natural Wellness Expo, did very well, became known for I would put very big names, household names on the stage, but what I loved to do and what I became known for is finding those hidden gem voices out there who are working in their corner of the world, and they've discovered strategies and approaches that are outside of the mainstream, and that those are often the answers that people wake at night praying for. And so I wanted to give them a stage. So I did that through event producing for years, and then decided that wasn't enough. My stages weren't enough. And so I became an agent and now put state speakers on stages across the world. I've expanded from just wellness and well-being to also personal and professional development, do a lot of corporate work and that kind of thing.
Wow. That just sounds like quite the story, So when you very traumatic, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Losing your father, going into foster homes, being separated from your siblings and your mom. I did get to keep my sister with me, which was a godsend, obviously. During that time, it was a saving grace. And then getting finally getting back home and having this secret that revealed itself and separated me from my family again.
Wow. But the treatments did work, obviously, or when you were there.
They did. They didn't think I would walk again. They didn't think I'd be able to because the cancer had actually eaten my whole pelvis area. There was like a toothpick left. And thank goodness I was young. I think that had a lot to do with my healing. Um, a secret between me, you, and your audience
Uh-huh.
is they would bring me in medications daily, and something inside of me told me that was going to harm my healing. I'm a proponent of we're each on our own journey. We should be able to make our own decisions. Even as a youngster, somehow I got that in my spirit. And so I would hide the pills. And I was told on a few times, like one time I had to drink this barium or whatever it was. And I had done it so many times and it would make me so sick that I would put it in my mouth and then go into the bathroom and spit it out after the nurse left. And these two little old ladies saw me doing it and told on me. So I would get told on a lot. But I really do believe that I understood that the body's pretty powerful if it if it's just given the chance. I think the same is true for the spirit. Your spirit is very powerful as long as you're not knocking it down every single day. So somehow through that journey, I not only walk fine, you could never tell that I was in a wheelchair with a death sentence, and then a sentence that even if I did walk someday, I wasn't ever going to walk right. And I did carry a child.
Wow. Well, that's such a success story. But it's there's so many things. Every time I do an interview, I kind of let it just unfold naturally, and there's so much to unpack here. Obviously, you found that experience really taught you how to tell your own story and the importance of a story. Um, how do people? This is such a big question. As in the healing industry, when people have challenges in their lives, we always say, "Oh, well, you grow from it." But it's hard to tell someone that when they're experiencing what you just experienced. I mean,
There's growth, but I think there's first discovery. There's a new awareness comes about. We go bebopping along in life and we think we know everything and we think we've got it figured out, and something derails you and you're like, "Oh, maybe I don't have it figured out. Maybe there is this whole other side of things that I didn't understand." And even however young you are, it is almost like a portal into a whole different awareness. And that's what I experienced pretty early on, and seeing those faces, the children's faces that didn't get to step into the rest of their lives. I mean, I seriously, every single morning, still wake up for their faces and their voices. And there are just certain things that happen along our respective journeys in life that are fundamental to who we become and what we set our energies to every single day.
yeah, and it sounds like it really challenged you to look within, to turn within, and to build a strong sense of self-reliance. I mean, you had to listen to think about this. A lot of people struggle their entire lives learning how to listen to that inner voice, and you had to learn how to listen. When you were taking those pills and sliding them to the side, you were listening to that inner voice.
Right. Sometimes even what you can't explain turns out to be a thing later, a thing you understand later. But just when I that did teach me to never ignore my gut. I might need to explore, maybe it's just based on some, misplaced emotion. But at that young age, there wasn't a whole lot of misplaced emotions to deal with. It was just something inside saying, if you're going to heal, you need to give your body the fighting chance. And to me, that meant not drinking all the sodas they kept trying to bring me for nausea, and trying to eat as good as I could. I mean, it's hospital food. They would bring you desserts and cookies and candies. People always wanted to, there would be volunteers that would come with candies and things. And I don't know how I knew. I'm thankful that something in me said, for me, I'm not saying medications aren't a very valid and good thing, but for me, it was just so much. There was an onslaught of it on a daily basis that I knew I had asked, will these heal me? And it was all for comfort, except for the drinking the barium stuff. It was for yet another scan or, whatever.
Yeah.
But so I did have quite a bit of radiation, which I still have the effects of all these years later. Um, but I have learned since, and I didn't know this then, that that liquid that you drink, drinking too much, weakens your ability to digest food. I do have digestive issues. It just weakens that muscle in there, and they say, never say never, but it's irreversible is what is said.
Yeah. All right.
So yeah, you're exactly right, CJ. I don't know how, but something inside of me said, temper it as much as I could.
Now, did you learn? Was that came naturally to you? To how do you how would you tell someone, a listener right now, if there's someone listening to this conversation and they're struggling with a health issue or something in their lives, how would you tell them to ask themselves what the truth is? Do you have a method for that?
Well, first and foremost, I do believe that knowledge is power. So don't knock any other possibilities. Get all the possibilities for your particular situation, lay them out on the table, look at the pros and cons, look at the science behind each, look, but at the end of the day, you've got to shut off everybody else's opinions and voices and go with, and when we say gut, I do believe that there's a connection between your gut, your inner stomach, I don't know how else
Yeah.
to say it,
Yeah.
and your brain, or maybe it's a brain of its own. There's going to be something that says, "This feels right to me." I know that's maybe doesn't sound scientific, but if you dig, there's actually a lot of science behind that. I think that people lovingly want to give you they wanna rescue you, right? They wanna give you their opinion out of love, and it can shut off your ability to really sense what your body is telling you. Our bodies want to survive. They want to live. We want to live, right? And so I think given the information and then the quiet space where you at the end of everybody else's opinion, whether it's a white coat's opinion or your spouse, whoever it is, it's gotta come from you, and there's a power behind that. Even if it's maybe not the optimal direction, who knows? Ultimately, the end tells, right? The end result tells. Before that, either direction you take is gonna be a bit of a gamble, but the belief in what you're doing is healing in itself. That's power and strength in itself, and when you go into something with doubt or fear, that is counterproductive to your healing.
Mm. Well, I think so much of us, so many people here in the West, we're taught to do everything in our mind. And what I'm hearing you say, which I love, is there is a time for that. You collect the information, pull the data in, but there's also a time to come from what I call your feeling space, your body. Your body has an intelligence of itself. And so learning to incorporate that in the decision making process, and you just say to my body, how does this feel to me? Does what is the right feeling? And so, and I'll tell you, I spent most of my life, my mind would say something and my body was rejecting, I'm getting nervous or cramps. You talk about stomach issues, whatever, and then I just walk right through it, right? Power through it. And
Mm,
I found out, no, 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 no. It's better to listen to your body.
yeah. You can counter to your body screaming at you. And it doesn't mean don't get uncomfortable, because usually the best decisions are not comfortable. Even speaking, like that's a whole that we'll get into that later. But
Yeah, yeah.
getting on stage is not always comfortable. As a matter of fact, for even some of the biggest names, they say every time they go to step on the stage, they get that holy goodness, what have I gotten myself into? But there's this knowing and strength that comes that you just can't deny it if you'll give yourself the chance to listen, that I can do this even in the worst of situations. I can do this versus I don't know if I can do this. Everybody says I should. I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to try, it's a different approach. As a matter of fact, this is related but parallel. Right out of college, you moved to Texas right out of
Yes,
college, I
I
think you
did.
said. I
Uh-huh.
did too. I got an internship offer in Texas. Okay, I'm very Italian. My family's from New York. I grew up in the LA area and California, West Coast. There were no Italians in Texas. Like, what the heck was I going to be doing in the center? There were no Italians there. But I knew that this opportunity was one I wanted to take. And so at the time, I was a single mom of a 4-year-old, and all of my family, everybody who loved me, and I didn't have any real income, right? "What are you doing? What no, this is the absolute wrong thing to do," right? But I knew it was the right thing to do. As a matter of fact, 3 days before I was supposed to go, they threw me a big going away party. I didn't really have the funds to go. I didn't have what I needed to be able to make it happen. But I knew it was what I was supposed to do, so everything else would fall in place. I don't even know, CJ, how I knew. It was just that thing. And afterwards, it was kind of the after, the few closest friends sitting around the couches and just chit chatting after this party. And there was this kind of stack of greeting cards on the, farewell cards on the little coffee table, and I just started opening them as we're chit-chatting, and here was $50, here was I did not expect any money. I didn't let anybody know I didn't have the money, and it was to the penny, well, I should say, to the dollar, exactly what I needed to be able to make that trip happen.
It's right. When you have, I believe that. I believe when you have a clear intention and clarity, the universe, spirit, whatever you want to call that higher power, just flips it in, right?
Yep,
Brings it to you.
yep.
So I was going back to one of the things you said earlier about um, getting on a stage, because I want to talk about what you do and how you bring stories to people. Um, I know I'm the same way when I have to speak, but here's the difference. When I speak, I'll get worked up beforehand. Like the night before, I'll make sure I have some bullet points, and even the morning of. But I've learned when I step onto the stage, I've learned through my training as a spiritual life coach and how to do prayer to just step into what I call it stepping into spirit, just stepping into that space of knowing. And so the minute that I start speaking, it's like, whoa, right? I'm in a different it's me, but it's more than me. That's what I would say. It's me, but it's more than me. It's God through me, spirit through me. Um, how do you search for people that have that kind of passion and charisma? And is that what you seek? You know?
Under I might oversimplify the word,
Uh-huh.
but you can tell when someone's putting on a show or when someone's authentic. And I
Mm,
know the word authenticity and be authentic is really kind of overused and it's watered down its true meaning. But if you are really being CJ and you're bringing CJ to the stage, that's who I want on the stage. I don't want some formula you learn somewhere. Now, there's ways to engage with the audience. There's strategies. You come at it strategically, but you can tell the one who's really just trying to be the thing versus know who they are, know what they want to accomplish, know the impact that they want to make. And sure, there's a certain level of stepping into the role before you've actually arrived. m- But but there's a difference between that person who's maybe just doing it for the paycheck or just doing it for the prestige versus that person who can't really do anything else but get his voice and his stories or hers out there, right? There's this compelling inside. And whether I mess up or whether they like my silly laugh or not, I'm going to do it.
right. I think that I love it. And I agree. You hear a lot about authentic, but authentic is a really wonderful word because it's not just it's really an alignment with yourself, right? Are you authentic with the truth of who you are? When you were that child and you were in that uh, facility, you were being authentic and you were listening to your authentic voice all the time. And that's such a gift, by the way, because a lot of people, it took me many years to get there. Or rather, let me say I was authentic and then I had some really horrible experiences where I was shamed or embarrassed, and then I learned to pull the authenticity away, you know, and
Yeah,
put on that veneer. Go
we can
ahead.
get that authenticity slapped right out of us. You look at a child and they'll go up to any other child, and what doesn't matter what color they are, what class they are, if they're rich or poor or boy or girl, doesn't nothing matters. They're just authentically children and they just want to hang out together and they're not going to try to impress. I mean, maybe they'll try to show off a little bit, but they're not going to try to put on a persona that they aren't. They're just gonna be, that either outgoing kid they are, or maybe the shy kid they're whatever it is, and then things happen in life, and all of a sudden we have to fall in line, and we lose that connection to who we really are. Hopefully, as you begin maturing, you recognize that, and you begin claiming parts of just claim yourself back. Like, nope, I'm CJ, or nope, I'm Antoinette, and I'm gonna be who who I feel like I'm on this earth to be, who is inside me that that just is screaming to get out, to do their thing in this very short time that we have on this planet.
Yeah, there's a parallel here I want to share with the listeners is we were talking earlier about the body, and one of the things my yoga instructor has always told me is that your body is a self-healing mechanism. It is a self-healing mechanism, but you have to get the stuff out of the way, the things that are stopping it from healing,
Well, that's
which
so good, CJ, because usually we think we gotta add things, but most of the time it's subtracting more than adding, subtracting bad lifestyles, bad attitudes, um, bad environments, whatever they might be, then adding more pills. I'm not saying pills aren't good. There are places for it,
right.
but adding surgeries, maybe there's other ways, right? Figure out what all your options are, going back to the beginning and really look at it. I think your gut is going to say non-toxic, non-invasive before it's going to dive right in to that as first choice.
Exactly. I think, unfortunately, in our society, we see all these commercials. Everything is about quick, 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 right? A quick fix. Take the pill. And and when we're talking about finding authenticity, you were just saying the same thing. And what I try to teach in my art retreats is it's a matter of removing the things that have blocked you from being your true self.
Mm.
Going back to your childhood and removing or even growing up, the things that, that traumatic experience that stopped you from being free with your brush, you know, and it's about removing it. So there's this parallel of less is more, right?
Yeah,
You know?
right. And a quick little story. So while I was in this internship, there was this incredible artist, and so I cut hair for everybody, in this particular uh, community that we were in, and I wasn't even licensed. It was just
Oh,
kind of a
you
thing.
cut hair? That's what
I
makes
don't
you so
actually,
good.
yeah, I don't do. It's just, um, so we traded, and he did this gorgeous drawing. It was actually a drawing of, oh, I don't have it. Thank you. Of my son and I loved it. It was perfect. He said, "Well, let me take it. I just want to do a few more things." I'm not, it's perfect. It's perfect right now. He took it, and when he brought it back, it was overworked. It was just like,
Oh.
it's been actually in, I hope he's not listening. It's years, decades later, but it's just been in the sleeve, right, that he gave it to me in, because he basically overworked it. I bet as an as a leader in the art space, as somebody who mentors people in the art space, you continually say that mantra, less is more, right? You can definitely try to cover, I don't think that we consciously do that, but we start covering up the real beauty that's there. And so the parallel for me is, when you're authentic, don't try to cover up what's there. Try to draw out what's there. Accentuate what's the light, the being that's already there. Don't try to mask it, because people see right through that mask, and right away you're just not going to make the connections that are so important to becoming successful. Look at the biggies. Let's take Anthony Robbins as an example. I've
Mhm.
had the privilege of working with some of the producers of his enrollment events, and gotten some deeper, insights. And he is not an easy personality. He's a big personality, and he's gruff, and all the things. And if he would have conformed to what was right for a speaker, would he be who he is? Would he have the following that he now does? But it didn't happen overnight. Each time you get out there and perform, each time you make any small decision, you're collecting data. what felt right? What am I leaning into? What causes people to lean in to me,
Mm.
whether as a speaker or a human being? What causes them to step back from me? Where do I make the connections? Where do I blow the connections? Everything we do along the way is, if you're wise, it's another piece of data really showing you the truth of what unique value you bring to the table.
I love that because I have slowly, I keep tweaking how I present. And what I notice is being very real and sharing personal stories and not the same story over. If you say the same story so many times that you say it like that, right? Like then they sense that. They sense that it's a tired story. It's almost like it's better to tell a fresh story from that morning when you're drinking coffee, right? And something happened than a story that you've had all your life. If you can't keep the interest in it, you have to be engaged in your own story. And if you're not engaged in your own
Yes,
story, they won't be. The second thing
they
I've
will.
learned is to include them. I think include the audience. Ask them. While you're standing up there, I just love to reach out and say, "Don't you agree?" Or, "How do you feel about that?" Anthony Robbins. I want to tell you a little bit of my story. When I was in my early 20s, I started teaching, and I was terrified. The idea of standing in front of a classroom terrified me. And a friend gave me, it was a cassette set of Anthony Robbins, 30 cassettes. It was huge. It was like this. And I listened to every one of his tapes over and over again, learning how to empower yourself on a stage. And so I have a loving space in my heart for his methodologies, how he taught me to hold myself and step into
Yeah.
myself. Yeah. So
Speak to just to that a little bit on a tactical
yeah.
sense. So I do believe in having a core talk because I
Right.
think that a confused mind doesn't buy, and be able to point you out as the clear expert and the clear choice for certain stages is really important. But you're exactly right, CJ. It needs to feel fresh every single time. So if you'll allow me, I'll give it
Yeah.
two tactical ways that I encourage speakers to do that. First, and thank you for the space. Map your core talk, and it should be accordion. You should be able to expand it, contract it, meaning when that organizer comes to you for a certain focus, you can lean into that focus. When you only have 45 minutes instead of 90 minutes, you're able to easily do that, right? But where you make it fresh every single time, and you touched on this, CJ, is through your stories. And so everyone has a phone in their pocket, right? They've got a whole computer library in their pocket. Um, Grab, one of the apps. Like, I like Trello, but there's Evernote, there's Google Docs, there's all of them. There's um s- Google Sheets, all the things, and create a story bank. And I actually borrowed this from one of the guests on my podcast, SpeakPact, Cesar. Oh my goodness, Cesar. Can't remember your last name, but look up Cesar. He taught this, and now all of my speakers do it. But as you're going along your day, something hits you, something happens, might just be a casual encounter in a grocery store where you strike up a conversation with someone that just kind of gives you a light bulb moment, whatever it might be. And just jot down a couple of quick, it could be audio notes or typed in notes into that data bank, that story bank that will trigger your memory of that situation. And then when you are chosen and contracted for an engagement, and they ask you for a different focus, and you do your research into the audience, which please always do, to make it about them, to your other
Mm.
point, then you choose the stories that are for them. You should never tell a story just because it's a great story and it makes you look great, or it gives people affection towards you because you went through so much. That is not why you share a story. You share a story to help illustrate something that will help spark a micro transformation in your audience, or help them really understand the strategies that you're bringing to the table in an illustrative kind of way. Stories are to support. They are not to, I don't know. They shouldn't be a pride piece. They should be more always about helping the other person
Mm,
cross the bridge from where they are to where you know they want to be. That's what the stories should support. And that will make, if you practice this, no talk will ever feel the same, even though the core actually is. And you will always be speaking directly to your given audience. You look at Tony Robbins, and he really doesn't stray much from his core message. It just, but it people go year after year after year after year, and there's many examples of whoever your hero might be of the same, right? At the core, you can say this person is the go-to person for, and then you should be able to finish that sentence.
mm, mm. I love that micro transformation. I love that word. And I love the idea. You know what? I do that, but I never called it a story bank because I am also a writer and I keep my notes field and constantly I will record an idea for a story. And but I never called it a story bank. And I love
You deposit those stories into your bank.
that's a lovely term. And you know, I want to share this with our listeners. Um, this is important even if you don't ever want to get up on stage, because when you're at a party, when you go to an event, you're always telling who you are. And being able to understand who you are and have that available, right? Would you agree that that's important for everyone?
Absolutely. It's about connection. And connection isn't about you, it's about them. So if you have a story that can relate to where they are and bridge that connection, that's what the story is about. And we've all been to those parties or been to those even family reunions where someone goes on and on and on about this long story that you have absolutely no interest in. Like you're trying to find some reason why your life energy should be focused in.
And you're like, what's the meaning here?
Yeah,
What's the
can you
meaning?
get to something that I can hold on to? That's a person speaking for themselves
Mm,
versus we're in a conversation and you, CJ, share a story with me that really illustrates something related to our conversation that helps me see you a little bit better, see something, shines a light on something that might plant a seed in me a little bit better. That's go give. That's real connection. So, yes, have your story bank, keep those stories, whether you're a speaker or not a speaker. I mean, there's so much legacy there also, which is a whole different story.
story.
Um, but it really at the end of the day, whether we're connecting with people in a social setting or from the stage, that's the glue, that's the bridge.
Right. And I learned that it's very key listening. It's not just speaking, it's listening. And I realized that when I was doing sales calls that when I was young, I would go to a sales call and I'd be telling story, 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 and the person across from me would just, glaze over. And I realized, you know what? If you just went in and just let them talk and listen to who they are, invariably it would end to where you want it to end. It could, it would end to a sale, but they need to be heard.
Right.
So I
And hell, as they're talking, if you're already formulating what you want to say. So I like to say, listen with release. Listen with no idea of what you might want to comment when there's that pause that makes it your turn to talk. And you've been with that person as well. As you're talking, you can tell they already have formulated their ideas and they already have their thing they want to say. So you better hurry up so they can say their thing, right? Versus that person who's genuinely curious. That's what makes you such a great podcaster, CJ, is you are genuinely curious and you ask great questions and you listen. Then we can have a real conversation. If you ask me a question and I could feel that you already have the answer that you're hoping I say, and you already have the next thing you're gonna say after I say my thing. It's just like a whole different
Yeah,
that's no
you can feel it. And you know what? I love that. Boy, you just taught me another term that I really love. Listen with release. That is such a powerful, I'm going to say it's a spiritual principle there. Listen with release.
Thank you. I think I just made it up. Maybe I heard it somewhere.
You know what? You're gonna coin that because that's a good term. It's true. You're listening truly with with the expectation of hearing, and releasing it to what all the potentialities, and there's a lot that it can be, instead of, like you said, knowing listening, but trying to force it down an avenue.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I love
Lovely.
that you parallel art with speaking and just with life because it all if you can see it all as the same, there's really no stage fright. There's no question about our next step in life, and there's no question about whether or not we're going to paint a perfect painting. It's all just an expression. We're all expressing ourselves, and I think the greatest form of expressing ourselves is when someone else is enriched, right? So I think when you get on stage and you care about you, how do I look? How are they going to receive me? Am I going to do it perfectly right? You're going to have stage fright. They're going to feel that awkward ness, and they're gonna you never want an audience to feel sorry for you. Speak from your scars, not your open wounds, and so if you go on to that and on the other side, if you go onto that stage, really, how can I bring those micro transformations today? How can I change one life here today? How can I answer the the cries in the night for this solution that they've been looking for, right? If you speak to that one person, that your life experience, the expertise you bring to that stage can change. You can't get nervous because it's about them. It's not about you. And all of a sudden, your hair might be all over the place, and it just doesn't matter. You're not even
Doesn't matter.
thinking about it because you're thinking about them.
Exactly, and you're right. It's the same thing when you're painting. You release it. You listen and release, and you let it go where in anywhere at once. If you have an expectation that it's going to be pretty, or an expectation that it's going to be impactful, you suddenly limit its potential.
Mm.
You just let it go. It's going to tell you what it wants to be. So earlier, I thought you said you had two ideas, and I don't want to cut that off. Did you say you had a set? You said about the story, putting it in your phone. Was there another idea that you had that you wanted to share? I didn't mean to. We get
Uh,
so into the topics. It's exciting to go all these different topics. I don't want to cut you off on anything that you else. that you-
we did cover it. It was so the reason behind telling stories,
Yes.
and then we covered it through talking about listening versus it's not the act of storytelling that's important, it's the act of connection that's important. And you can't connect if you don't hear. And I like the way that you said listen with the intent of hearing. So we can all do the action of listening, but really not hear a dang thing.
Right.
Um, so if you're telling your stories, if you're having conversation, not to bolster yourself, not to give a formula for people to follow your proven formula, but really to connect with where they are and be the bridge to help get others to where they want to be, whether it's through your art retreats or whether it's through the art you create or the talk you create or just the conversation you have. That shows a genuinely authentic human being who cares about you. And when somebody cares about you, are you going to lean in? Are you going to pull back?
Mhm. You have, so here's where you're at. You have this wonderful experience, and you're very talented at helping people get up on the stage and finding the right people. What is your personal, do you still want to tell your story? Do you still do speaking engagements yourself?
When I have to. So I get invited quite a bit and I do very well. But really, my mission, my love is to get your voice out there. That's really what I love doing because mine is just one voice. When I can get hundreds of then that's exponential multiplication of how many lives, how many people are finding those strategies and those solutions that they're looking for. So yeah, I'll get out there. My talk's all about the power of voice and how to utilize it and step into it. And I enjoy doing that. But to me, if I'm being super vulnerable here.
Yeah.
The whole while I'm thinking of all the other voices that day or that 3 days, the day of travel, the day of being there, the day of traveling back, is keeping me from my real work of getting your voice, other global voices out there on stages across the world.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, that you're truly being of service, and it's less about you or your ego or whatever. It's more about helping all these people.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. This has been a great talk, and you've given me some terms that I'm just gonna like devour. I'll get out and write them down as part of another talk. But is there anything else you want to share with the listeners? Is there any message you want to get across of something that you think is important that needs to be heard right now in today's world?
Your voice. Do you whether it's just for the sake of your family, for the sake of your community, or on a bigger scale to get step onto stages, whatever it might be, don't allow anyone or anything to temper the fact that you have a unique perspective. Your point of view cannot be duplicated. You have your own set of life experiences, you have your own life journey, and don't allow that to be buried with you at the end of your days. That is real power and influence and rippling impact that is going to be forever lost unless you collect the data of who you are and what you bring to the table and that unique point of view that you can share, that you and I, CJ, can share the same exact story, but people will receive from you different than what they would receive. They would get two separate, completely different messages and outcomes and takeaways, right, from that because of where we come from how we bring it to the table, and from what we gained from those lessons. So it grieves my heart to know that there are millions of voices out there every single day that are lost forever because they journeyed this earth, they did the things that they thought they were supposed to do, and then they left this earth and, you know, that's just gone. There's nobody else that can step into your voice except for you. You're the only one that has it.
I love that. So step into your voice.
Yep, that's
Yeah,
it.
well, that is wonderful, and I totally agree. We all have our, I call it unique creative DNA. We all
Mm,
have a unique creative DNA, and no one else ever again will come on this planet that's like you. So and I don't like to say your task because that sounds negative. Your gift is to share that. That's
mm.
your gift, and don't leave that gift unwrapped, right? Just do it. So I
Don't
want
leave
to
the gift unwrapped. I love that.
don't leave that gift unwrapped. So thank you so much for being on my podcast. I love this. I love so many things you talked about, and I'm sure our listeners will grow a lot with it. And in the notes, I will put your information in your website. Should people want to get in touch with you, reach out, learn more. Have you ever written a book?
Yeah, it's funny.
Ah,
I've written many books as a ghostwriter, but not one for myself. So I
well,
hope.
I will tell you this. Spirit is telling me that you have a book coming soon.
Okay. All
Okay.
right.
I'm sorry I get these things, and so start because you have
I
so much
receive.
to share in your voice, and
Thank you,
yeah.
CJ. I receive it.
All right. That's great. All right, listeners, thank you for listening to the Spiritual Artist Podcast. As you know, I love also helping you find your voice. And I encourage you to look up my spiritual art retreats where you spend 4 days immersed in mindfulness and art making together, and check out more information if you're interested. So thanks again for listening to the Spiritual Artist Podcast. Now go out there and be creative. Thanks again for listening to the Spiritual Artist Podcast. Whether you're watching this show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, or iHeartRadio, make sure you choose the subscribe button so that you will receive updates when new segments are released. Most importantly, be still, listen, and know that you are a spiritual artist.